So we spoke about the New Zealand Trail, and if at any time you want to revisit any kind of topic, we can. But I kind of want to move on to your time with the Appalachian Trail,
Mm-hmm.
and tell us when you started, when you ended, and just sort of notable features from that trail
Yeah,
and
yeah. So
stories.
the old Appalachian Trail from Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods. It's the oldest through hike. Well, I shouldn't say that because El Camino's been around for a long time, but in the United States, it's the oldest um, continuous footpath for human traffic. Oh, actually, let me cut that. The Long Trail in Vermont was the first through hike. And from the summit of Mount Stratton in Vermont, the idea of a through hike across the United States was born. And they wanted to take it across the Appalachian Mountains. The the Appalachian Trail, is a 2,189-mile trail traversing 14 states, only goes through 2 national parks, and only goes across 25 wilderness areas, many of them in the state of Virginia. The AT is interesting, and it transitions well into what I'm doing now because I had a few profound experiences on the AT. It starts off in Georgia at Springer Mountain. 85 miles later, you're hitting the border of North Carolina, and I was going fast. I completed Georgia in 2 days, 1 hour, and 1 minute. So I was going over 40 miles a day, and that was by design. I wanted to break the Appalachian Trail self-supported speed record. Ambitious. I was not ready to give that a go. Well, pretty soon you're going through the Southern Balds in North Carolina, and you're entering Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and you're on top of Clingman's Dome. I actually got there at 9 o'clock at night, and it started to snow on May 5th. I started on April 28th on Springer. The whole journey took me 89 days, so just under 3 months, going about a marathon a day. Initially, I was going much faster. But coming out of Nantahala Outdoor Center in North Carolina and approaching Great Smoky Mountains National Park, I pulled my IT band. And it was just an overuse injury, as runners typically get. And something that catches one off guard on the AT is how difficult the terrain is. Even though the Appalachian Trail is a full 500 miles shorter than the Pacific Crest Trail, you gain more elevation on the Appalachian Trail. Even without those extra 500 miles, there's more elevation gain. Every single undulation on the landscape, you will go up and over. There is no contouring, no bypassing mountains. Every bump on the way, the trail will go up and down. You end up climbing Mount Everest about 17 times when you add all of the total elevation gain from Springer to Katahdin. I believe you would be in orbit if you added all of that vertical distance in mileage into the sky. You would be in space. So it's one heck of an arduous journey. And that's how I got hurt. I got hurt in North Carolina trying to go too fast too soon. And I thought with 2 other through hikes under my belt that year, I might as well try to do a fast one. 1, to save money, but 2, to test myself, to test my stamina and strength. And I'll never forget being on Clingman's Dome, the highest point on the Appalachian Trail. It's above 6,000 feet. And it starts snowing on me. I end up running down the mountain because I wasn't expecting much snow in the month of May. It's May 5th and it's snowing on me. I get to a shelter, Mount Collins shelter. It's 0.4 miles off trail, to find it nearly full. Luckily, someone squeezed in just to allow me to be the 20th body in this really big shelter. And there are shelters or lean-tos, about every 8 miles across the Appalachian Trail. So there are places to seek shelter from the storm on the way. Most people still choose to tent. But I loved using the shelters. Luckily, I found one that night. It snowed the next day as I completed my hike across Great Smoky Mountains National Park. But then the trail throws a few neat curveballs at you. All of a sudden, you're in Virginia, walking through fields of feral ponies. You don't expect to walk by ponies on the Appalachian Trail. You're going over amazing southern balds, some that stick out are the Wyabald, Hump Mountain, the Houston Ridge near Carver's Gap in North Carolina, Buzzard Rocks. All of a sudden, my IT band feels so inflamed, I think I'm going to have to quit the trail. I rest for a day. Turns out that's all I needed was a day off. The very next day, after feeling better, I hiked 57.9 miles, the furthest I've ever walked in a day. I actually think I was slipping into a state of hypothermia because it was a cold rain that next morning around 5 a.m. as I was still walking, and I thought my mental faculties weren't all there, and I thought I should just curl up on that pile of wet leaves that looks soft. I lost my ability to reason, so I had to tell myself, no, keep going until you can find a dry place to sleep. The next shelter was full, so I ended up leaning against the exterior wall of the shelter and falling asleep with half of my body still in the rain. But I was that exhausted, but feeling better because my IT band had magically healed, so I wanted to put it to the test. Shortly after, I decided that the speed record was not going to be met by me. So when I got to Shenandoah National Park in Northern Virginia, I abandoned the quest for going fast, and then I just wanted to enjoy my time on the AT. In Shenandoah National Park, Ian, what really floored me was how unwild the Appalachian Trail is. On average, you're crossing a road every 4 miles, which means you're only walking 2 miles into the woods before you're coming out again. Now, it disturbed me a little bit. You start to hear the constant hum and see the imprint of civilization. You're seeing planes, trains, automobiles. Through Shenandoah National Park, there is a road, Skyline Drive, that dissects the park. And it steals a feeling of wildness from a visitor. When something is so accessible that it allows hordes of people to go into the wilderness, it no longer feels wild. And I felt that way for the next few states. I actually completed the 4-state challenge, which is when you walk from Virginia to Pennsylvania in one day. It's 44 miles, start in Virginia, walk through West Virginia, walk through Maryland, get to the Mason-Dixon line, and enter Pennsylvania. I did that with my University of Rochester cross-country teammates. It was a fun challenge. I'm glad we did it. I continue through Pennsylvania, and you get to New Jersey. And I say it like that as a curveball. I'm not going to say what you think I'm going to say. You cross the Delaware River at the Delaware Water Gap. I-80 is going through there, and it's maddening with the amount of cars and noise, mining sites in Pennsylvania. You really feel as though you're not on an epic wilderness quest. And when you get on top of Springer Mountain, there's a plaque in the ground that says, "A footpath for those who seek fellowship with wilderness." It didn't feel like that anymore in the mid-Atlantic. It didn't feel that way at all. But you get to New Jersey, and something remarkable happens that you do not expect. You're going up Dunfield Creek right after leaving I-80. And it's always fun getting to a new state, but something happened. You don't hear anything. Silence returns to the forest. You hear birds chirping. You see the first natural body of water on the Appalachian Trail, Sunfish Pond. There are no other natural undammed bodies of water on the AT south of New Jersey, just rivers and streams. Then you're on Raccoon Ridge and Mount Kittatinny and Sunrise Mountain and High Point. You can see the Catskills. You can see the Delaware River. Western New Jersey is spectacular. I walked past porcupines. I heard people saying they saw a bear, that the night before. There's wildlife again. And every step of the way from New Jersey to Katahdin in Baxter State Park in Maine, I really felt like I was having a wilderness experience like I did in New Zealand and on the Pacific Crest Trail. And when you have that kind of experience, you want to do something about it. So if I may, I'll just sort of share what I do now.
Yeah.
Because it's a good transition. Of course, I could give more details of New Zealand and the AT, but it was all of those road crossings in the mid-Atlantic that made me wonder, how wild is the United States of America? Well, luckily another couple is already collecting data, qualitative and quantitative data on exactly that. It's called Project Remote, where they're analyzing the most remote place in each of the 50 states. They're not done yet. They're about halfway done with their project. But they've done 13 of the 14 states that the Appalachian Trail traverses, with the exception of Georgia. And how do you calculate wilderness? I think they've done a good job. How far away is the nearest road? Because where there's a road, civilization follows. So they would find the most remote place across all these states. And I was shocked to learn that in a state like New York, no worries, a state like New York where we live, the furthest away you and I could get from a road is 5.3 miles. That's it. That's the most remote place left. We've trammeled the rest of New York State. As you know, drive anywhere from New York City to Buffalo, drive even through the Catskills, drive across the Adirondack Park. The most remote place you will find is only 5.3 miles from a road. Oh, it's much worse for most other states. Connecticut, 1.1 miles, you know. There are a few states that have skewed data, I believe, because there will be a barrier island somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean for Massachusetts, let's say, or something in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. And that gives state an inflated sense of wildness, I believe. But if you end up calculating all the data for the 13 states that they have calculated in Project Remote, about 4 miles on the East Coast is as far away as you can get from a road at the most remote point. So almost anywhere else in the state you stand, you're less than a mile from a road. So anyway, I go back to the Adirondack Park and I become a hiking guide. Again, I've pursued my passion to the nth degree. I want to keep doing it. So after this year-long journey, I got hired by the Adirondack Mountain Club once more to be their wilderness trip leader. And you return to a place you love and you see how it's changed, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. Well, I noticed that there's an overuse problem in the Adirondack High Peaks. So many people are going there, littering, disposing of their waste improperly. It's a significant issue. It doesn't feel wild when you're out in the wilderness seeing garbage and human feces. Yeah. It doesn't feel like wilderness anymore. It feels like you're going to a crowded gym and all of the treadmills are taken when you get on a popular trail and you're hoping for a beautiful sunrise to yourself and there's already 50 people on top of Cascade Mountain in the High Peaks. So you can do two things. You can either say, isn't this awful? Right. Someone should do something about this. Or you can do something about this. So I am. I started to clean up every single piece of garbage and bury every single piece of toilet paper I found. I've done this for the last month and a half, and I will continue to do this for the rest of my life.
And that's not your only job, though.
No. This is just what I do in my free time or while guiding to be a good leave no trace educator. I hope to have people follow in my footsteps and kind of model good behavior in the wilderness, picking up things that don't belong there, burying your excrement 150 feet away from trail or waterway. Yeah. And I want other people to start taking ownership and protecting what very little wilderness we have left. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm really fired up about wilderness. Yeah. Because even in Maine, when you walk across the 100-mile wilderness, it's actually not a wilderness at all. There are roads through there. It's a false wilderness. Yeah. Well, you get back to the Adirondack Park and you're standing in what is the last vestige of wilderness in the Northeast. Sure, you've got Baxter State Park in Maine, and you've got a few wilderness areas like the Pemigewasset in New Hampshire, a few in Vermont. Glastonbury comes to mind. There are a few places, little pockets of wilderness in the Northeast. 80% of the wilderness in the northeastern United States is in the Adirondack Park. 80% is in our backyard. Well, something that I'm really fired up about right now, in fact, it's taken up most of my free time, is trying to protect a recently acquired tract of land in the Adirondacks as wilderness. Governor Cuomo bought from the Nature Conservancy a tract of land called Boreas Ponds. This is really important. If the Boreas Ponds tract is added to the High Peaks Wilderness Area, which it's already adjacent to, you could fit this newly enhanced High Peaks Wilderness Area. You could fit Rocky Mountain National Park inside of the High Peaks in New York State. You could fit Mount Rainier National Park inside the newly enhanced High Peaks Wilderness. You could double Zion and fit it inside the High Peaks Wilderness. You could add Redwood National Park, Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado, and Arches National Park in Utah. Combine those together, they would fit inside this new wilderness area. But the Adirondack Park Agency, in collusion with the Nature Conservancy and other organizations and our representatives in the state legislature, have put together 4 proposals. This is right now in October 2016. 4 proposals for Boreas Ponds. None of them include a wilderness classification plan. Now, they all include some wilderness, but it's false wilderness, and I'll tell you why. If you stand on top of Allen or Skylight or Haystack or Marcy, 4 of the tallest peaks in the Adirondack Park, you will be looking down into the Boreas Ponds tract, which is just south of these high peaks. It is the most magnificent place in our state, and if it were to become pure wilderness, which would include removing a 7-mile road called Gulf Brook Road, closing it to motor vehicle traffic, it would simply be a very flat, easy corridor for anyone to walk. Currently in the interim plan, there's a gate halfway, so you have to still walk about 3.5 more miles to get to Boreas Ponds. It takes 45 minutes. It's flat, not much elevation gain. You could take a wheelchair in there. You could go in on crutches. You could wheel your canoe in. If we allow the Adirondack Park Agency to open the ponds to motor vehicle traffic, you would disrupt moose habitat, wood thrush habitat, woodcock habitat, common merganser habitat, loon habitat. When I was out there in early October, I saw moose tracks everywhere. Where are they going to go once all the cars come? They're certainly not going to stay in Boreas Ponds. They require our separation.
Right.
We only have 2.7% of the United States of America, the lower 48 states, designated as federal wilderness. That means you could take every wilderness area, including those humongous western scale wilderness areas out in Idaho and Washington and California and Wyoming, add those all together along with the Everglades and with the Adirondacks and with everything in the Northeast, add every wilderness area together, they would fit inside the state of Minnesota if you were to compress them all. And then picture the rest of the United States of America as a big sprawling suburb. If you were to add all of the pavement together in the lower 48 states, they would completely cover all of the New England states and more. And more. If you were to add up every parking lot and roadway and just put them all together, they would cover the entire Northeast. So what I'm advocating for and what this journey has helped me realize across the 3 through hikes is we don't have much wilderness left in this world. In fact, an article came out that just said 10% of the world's wilderness was lost in the last 20 years alone. So from what we had 20 years ago, only 90% is left. We don't have much left. Well, Boreas Ponds is a chance for everyone in New York State, well, actually everyone in the world, can go to the Adirondack Park Agency meetings starting this November 11th. There's one in Rochester on November 28th at RIT at 7 o'clock in the Sustainability Hall. People can go and say, hey, Adirondack Park Agency, you have offered us 4 proposals, none of which offer a full wilderness proposal. this is our chance as New York State residents and you as the governing body that oversees this classification to do something remarkable that will gain the world's attention. There aren't many people fighting to preserve large roadless swaths of land anymore, Ian.
Yeah.
There are already 6,970 miles of road in the Adirondack Park. And this is the same park that I said has the largest contiguous deciduous forest tract in a temperate climate in the world. Mm-hmm. And we've already fragmented it by 6,970 miles of road.
I'm curious, what are the 4 plans?
Yeah.
What do they
One
entail?
of them, proposal 1, is majority wild forest. And a wild forest classification means you can drive ATVs, snowmobiles, motor vehicles, all the way in and around the ponds. The most magnificent place I've seen in New York State is Boreas Ponds, and I've hiked all 46 Adirondack high peaks 5 times. I've hiked across the Northville Placid Trail. I've paddled the 90-miler across the Adirondacks. I've hiked every fire tower in New York State, in the Catskills, in the Adirondacks, excuse me. And Boreas Ponds is the most magnificent place. So
not an option.
We don't want 1.
Okay.
Because what you would be voting for if you wanted number 1 is more of the same. So much of, and I've seen this on the Appalachian Trail, so much of our country has been fragmented by roads. You can already drive the Skyline Drive and see all of Shenandoah. You can already drive to the summit of Whiteface, the 5th tallest mountain in New York. You can already drive and take a cog railway up to Mount Washington. You can drive up Mount Mitchell in North Carolina, the highest mountain east of the Mississippi River. So much is already accessible.
Yeah.
So what I'm advocating for is to deny the APA from voting for any 4 proposal. They need to develop a 5th proposal, and we should call on them to have a full wilderness option where we close Gulf Brook Road and allow the moose and the woodcocks and the loons to have their own place and a place for us to retreat out of the suburbs of Rochester, out of the suburbs of Buffalo, New York City, Albany, to retreat to the one place left in the Northeast that is a Western scale wilderness.
Yeah.
If we fail to go to the meeting at RIT on November 28th, the Adirondack Park Agency, I've been to the APA meeting. I know that this is what they want. They and Governor Cuomo want Boreas Ponds to be accessible. But what they're doing in making it accessible is robbing a sense of wilderness from everyone else, not just New York State, but anyone else who would ever retreat to the Adirondacks for a sense of tranquility. Mm-hmm. In a world where there's already so much development, if we go to this meeting on November 28th and ask the APA to save Boreas Ponds as wilderness, we would be doing something remarkable that would draw significant economic attention, because who wouldn't want to go explore the wildest place in the eastern United States? It's a myopic position to say that we need to develop it, because in 50 years, if temperatures rise, as the Department of Conservation has suggested it will, this isn't going to be a snowmobiling destination.
Right.
We should have the foresight to preserve the very few places we have left as wilderness. Mm-hmm. So that's what my journey is spiraled into, is a quest for wilderness advocacy, fighting for what little wilderness we have left.
Cool. I'll have to get more details on that when we end the interview. Because are you going to go to that meeting in Rochester?
I'll be there.
Okay, cool.
I'll be the first one in line talking, I hope.
Cool. Well, I'll hope to be there too. So from what you've learned in your through hikes and in your experiences, if someone wants to through hike a trail, let's say a multi-month expedition, can you give them any kind of advice, any general advice?
Yes.
I ask this question a lot for people who want to begin to get healthier, and I ask people who've already lost 100, 200 pounds, give some advice to this person who wants to get healthier. Same to you. How can someone begin to through hike a trail?
Mm-hmm. What an undertaking. So it takes, I don't want to marginalize what people have to do to make this possible for them. It takes tremendous sacrifice. I mean, first and foremost, to go on a through hike, even if it's a week long, you're going to miss events with work colleagues or family members that you typically would have attended. And if you go on a much longer journey, you're going to miss multiple events, milestones in people's lives who you care about. So you have to sacrifice relationships. You might be leaving a spouse or loved one. You might be leaving kids. You might be leaving friends for a week or more, months. And so there's a lot that you have to do to prepare. One is making that mental leap of, oh my gosh, are my finances in order for me to embark on a journey of this magnitude and duration? For me, I worked since I was 14 years old. Some people hear my journey and think, oh, here's a kid who's a trust fund baby who didn't earn the right to go on this journey. Are you kidding me? I walked 6 miles to my Penfield internship in the snow because I didn't have the money to buy a car, and I was saving money since I was 14. So it takes a lot of financial and familial and friendship sacrifices. So you have to get through that first barrier of how can I even begin to contemplate and make this a possibility for myself. I had to quit my job. I had to make sure my education was complete, and I had to make sure I was physically prepared and equipment-wise well equipped to venture off on this journey. So the first thing someone should do who lives in Rochester and wants to do a thru hike is go on a micro adventure. And by that I mean take a long weekend, take a Monday or a Friday off, drive on up to the Adirondacks or the Catskills or down into the southern tier on the Finger Lakes Trail and go for a 3-day walk in the woods. Camp out, bring food, bring a bear canister to protect our woodland friends. And we want to be good stewards of the land, so definitely have a bit of a stewardship mindset. Don't leave your garbage around. Have some good wilderness ethics. Be respectful of other visitors and wildlife. Go on a micro adventure first, Ian. See if you enjoy it. Mm-hmm. If you come back from that 3-day vacation wanting more, you'll start to dial in your equipment needs that you're lacking and your physical needs that are probably not fine-tuned at that point. No one who's had an office job is ready to go on a 2,000-mile hike.
Right.
You have to start small, sign up for some local 5Ks, do some walking for 8 hours in a day before you can say, I can do this with a backpack on over arduous terrain.
I will say that, when the camera was off for a couple seconds, Tyler and I were speaking about when I was in undergrad, I took, it was during spring break, and we went with our outdoor club at Alfred University to, I think it was like North Carolina was one state, but we went on a multi-day hike, and it was really fun. I enjoyed it, but I learned so much. You learn so much about, man, I didn't use that fill in the blank piece of equipment. So I'm not going to bring it with me on a 2,000-mile hike. Or, man, I really wish I had a blank or leukotape, So that's, you learn from experience. Let me play devil's advocate a little bit and say, someone may be watching this and saying, okay, I know Tyler's not a trust fund baby. He earned this money and he spent his hard-earned money on this adventure. But he was single. He was essentially, I'm thinking of someone who maybe is in their mid-30s, mid-40s. Maybe they have a couple kids. They have a wife or a husband. How would you respond to someone who says, a 35 or 45-year-old taking a week or a month away from their family or more, it's selfish?
Yeah. Well, typically the demographics you see on long trails are people who have just finished educational milestones. We're talking college kids, or 2, retirees. I get it. I have people in my life who have young families, and it's hard. You can't just up and leave your family to go on a multi-month journey. But you can bring them. You can. I've seen that. I've seen families on trail. That would require a lot of preparation. Everyone has anchors in their life, and some you're happily affixed to, and others you can let go. One of them that you should probably let go of is credit card debt. You better get that under control, or else you'll never be able to do anything you want to do. So for me, I had to pay off all of my loans I had to make sure my finances were in order. Look, I was single. I don't have kids. That's another sacrifice I have made. I don't have a family, and people love their families for the most part. Well, a sacrifice I've made is not starting one yet to make sure that I can do this travel now. Sure, there are ways that benefits me, but also it's never fun to do these adventures alone. So there's that side of the coin too to think about. You'd have to, as a middle-aged person, be willing to put things on hold or bring things with you. Quitting a job is never easy. Putting things in a storage unit, selling a house or a car, that's not easy. Certainly leaving your loved ones behind, even if they're just friends and distant relatives, that's never easy. Through hiking's not easy. And if you go through those steps that are difficult and demanding, you're setting yourself up for a really good story. And anyone who's interested in being outside for an extended period of time, doing the most inexpensive vacation possible through hiking, you can have a story that'll change your life, change mine. But it is hard for middle-aged people who have a lot of anchors, many of which are happily attached to them. I had to let go of my apartment, my friends, my family, my job that was comfortable, and I had to pay off all my bills and make sure that I saved enough money. Remember, I was going to buy a car, and instead I used that money. Ostensibly, it was for a vehicle. It ended up being my adventure money for a year. So I had to let go of every anchor in my life, and that was hard. That was scary. Lots of sacrifice has to be made to go on a through hike. Start off with a small one, see if you like it, and hopefully that'll leave you wanting more.
Cool. Future through hikes and future adventures on the horizon.
Huge. First announcement. I haven't really made this public. The thing I would love to do next is paddle from the Adirondacks to Maine along the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. Instead of a through hike, I want to do a through paddle. My goal is to leave in April. If I paddle a marathon a day, I'll finish in a month. They suggest you do it in the spring because the snow melt keeps all of the water high, the water levels high, so you don't have to do as much portaging when you carry your canoe over a stretch of land. So my next adventure is going to be the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. I really want to leave this coming April. I hope it works. Beyond that, I still have to do the Continental Divide Trail. I'll need to save more money, pay off the car that I did just recently purchase.
Was that your cross-track out there?
I ended up getting a used one instead of a new one.
And it's not orange.
Right. I ate enough ramen and cheap food along the journey that I was way under budget.
Great.
I didn't spend anywhere near the amount I thought I would. It's very cheap to live on a trail for a year with no rent and no big expenses.
Give us an idea. I know we're kind of going off on a side tangent here, but of the three trails, 3 adventures, what was your total cost, would you say?
Yeah, it ended up costing around $12,000, including flights.
Wow.
Mind you, I only showered and did laundry twice on the Appalachian Trail because I didn't want to spend $5 to do laundry. So I made that sacrifice to personal hygiene just to save money because I want to now save money for another future adventure. So I met a man who had spent over $10,000 on the Appalachian Trail alone. I spent just about that same amount of money on 3 trails. So it depends on how you can manage your money and what you're willing to sacrifice. For me, I didn't need to sleep in a hotel. Some people do once in a while. Sure. So I would just sleep under the stars for free as much as possible. Did not buy many luxury items, and that's how I ended up doing it way under budget.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So maybe this will be the last one, and I like to give the last word to whoever I'm interviewing. So this can be the last word, whatever you want to say that we didn't get to, but also I want to say if you were to summarize the year as a whole in an autobiography, you could probably write a whole book on your adventures, but just sort of, I guess, summarize your whole, all 3 stages and what you learned and any epiphany and big epiphanies and big thoughts, that kind of thing.
Sure. It was a year of backpacking bliss. I got to pursue my passion, which happens to be hiking, every single day for 13 months. That is incredible. I would wish that for everybody on this earth. It took a lot of bravery for me to say, okay, what are my strengths? Here's what I'm good at. I'm good at backpacking. I'm good at navigation skills. I'm good at reading maps. I'm good at planning food for a backpacking trip. My skill set, my attributes all involve things outside, hiking. Well, I then aligned those attributes with my passion for the outdoors. And when that happens, Ken Robinson, the motivational speaker, says, you're in your element. Mm-hmm. So if everyone listening to this podcast could just simply think of their attributes, their skill sets, and their passions, and find where those intertwine, you would also be in your element. So I really think that if anyone can glean anything from this, it's that you've just heard a talk from someone who is brave enough to pursue his greatest passions for a year. And yes, it involves sacrifice, and yes, it was hard, and yes, I wanted to go home sometimes, but ships aren't made to be kept in the harbor. So if you're willing to pursue a dream, you've got to go out and seize it. Because your dreams aren't coming to you. You got to go get them. And so I will now unabashedly pursue my passions for the rest of my life. So thankful that I discovered this at 28. And I'm 30 now. And I know that I'm setting myself up for a lifetime of adventure. I live life by the awesome principle, which I developed with my high school friend Zach King, where we simply ask ourselves when we have 2 options in front of us, which is the more awesome option? And in order to fill out all of my calendar squares to the max, I force myself to always choose the more awesome option. So my next option is, do I go on the Northern Forest Canoe Trail or do I not go on the Northern Forest Canoe Trail? It's more awesome to go, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. I won't let anything get in the way. I can't wait to have that next adventure and see where it takes me.
Cool. So if you want to get in touch with Tyler, he has, like I said, his Instagram is great, full of just amazing pictures. But if someone wants to, speak with you via email or via, via writing,
yeah, sure.
How else can they reach you?
Well, the direct messaging on Instagram is great. And I've made a lot of great new hiking friends that way, believe it or not. It's wonderful to find other people who are aligned with your passions and go explore with them. So yeah, Tyler Hikes on Instagram, and that's probably the predominant way that I'm reached. Yeah,
everyone has their own social media platforms that they really enjoy. So
that one's mine.
Yours is Instagram.
I love the pictures.
Okay, yeah, yours is Instagram. So great, people can reach him there. So Tyler, thanks so much.
Ian, this was awesome. I loved this. Thank you.
Yep, we'll see ya.